The wealthiest person you know might be the one you'd never guess, because real money almost never looks the way you expect it to. Meanwhile, some of the most broke people you know are driving the nicest cars and wearing the loudest labels. Today I'm covering all 12 quiet signs that someone is actually wealthy, signs that have almost nothing to do with how much they spend. We'll also run a real numbers case study near the end, and bust a few myths people get wrong about what wealth actually looks like. Stay for sign 8. It's the one almost nobody notices, including in their own life. Wealth is like an iceberg. What you see on the surface is a tiny fraction of what's actually there. Spending and net worth are two completely different things, and most of us were never taught to tell them apart. Quick note, these are general patterns from personal finance research and observation, not advice about any specific person. None of these signs are about judging anyone's choices. They're about noticing what quiet wealth building actually looks like. Researchers who study high net worth households consistently find the same pattern. Visible spending and actual net worth are often inversely related. In other words, the loudest displays of wealth are frequently a sign of the least of it, not the most. What separates the two groups isn't usually income. It's a consistent set of quiet habits repeated for years. Let's go through all 12, starting with sign number 1. Sign 1, their car is paid off, several years old, and they have zero plans to upgrade it anytime soon. A car payment is one of the biggest silent wealth killers. It's money that could otherwise be growing instead of depreciating. New vehicles typically lose a significant chunk of their value in the first few years alone. Someone building wealth quietly isn't anti-nice things. They're just not financing a depreciating asset for the image of one. The habit is simple. Buy modestly, pay it off, then keep driving it well past when most people would trade up. That single habit alone can free up hundreds of dollars a month for investing instead. Redirect just a $400 monthly car payment into investments instead, consistently, and a decade later that gap becomes significant. Sign number 2. Sign 2. They rarely talk about money, investments, or purchases, even when they clearly could afford to. Compare that to someone deep in debt who often narrates every purchase publicly, almost like proving something. This isn't a hard rule. Plenty of wealthy people are open about money. But loud financial bragging is rarely a sign of real security. Genuine financial confidence usually doesn't need an audience to feel real. If someone constantly needs others to know what they own, it's often less about the money and more about the validation. Quiet wealth tends to show up as calm, not commentary. There's a difference between being private and being secretive. This sign is about the absence of performance, not the presence of hiding. Sign 3. A portion of every paycheck moves into investments automatically before they ever see it in their checking account. This removes the decision entirely. There's no daily willpower battle over whether to invest this month. It happens on payday, every time, whether they're motivated that day or not. Small, consistent automatic contributions compound significantly over long time horizons, often more than people expect from modest monthly amounts. The people who build wealth quietly usually aren't picking hot stocks. They're mostly just consistent. If you're not automating any part of your investing yet, this is usually the highest leverage single change you can make. Automation also removes emotion from investing. No panic selling during a dip because the contribution happens regardless of headlines. Sign 4, their home and their lifestyle overall is noticeably below what their income could technically support. Banks will often approve a mortgage far larger than what's actually comfortable to carry long term. Quiet wealth builders tend to treat that approval number as a ceiling to stay well under, not a target to hit. The gap between what they could spend and what they do spend is exactly where their investing money comes from. It's a less exciting strategy than it sounds. It's mostly just choosing comfortable over impressive. This isn't about deprivation. It's about leaving real room between income and spending. Two households with identical incomes can end up with dramatically different net worth after a decade, based almost entirely on this one choice. Sign 5. They know their net worth number, not just their salary, and check it regularly. A high salary with high debt can produce a lower net worth than a modest salary with disciplined saving. Income is what you earn. Net worth is what you actually keep and grow. Quiet wealth builders track the second number. It doesn't need to be complicated. A simple monthly or quarterly check of assets minus debts is enough. Watching that number trend upward over time tends to reinforce the habits that got it there in the first place. If you've never calculated yours, that's usually a 5-minute exercise worth doing today. Tracking it also catches problems early. A net worth that's flat or falling despite a rising income is a signal worth investigating. Sign 6. They're genuinely not tracking what friends, coworkers, or neighbors are buying, driving, or wearing. Lifestyle comparison is one of the most common, least discussed drivers of overspending, matching purchases just to keep pace. When someone stops comparing, they stop making purchases driven by someone else's choices instead of their own goals. Quiet wealth builders tend to make spending decisions based on their own plan, not on what shows up in someone else's feed. This is often the hardest one to build because comparison is constant and mostly automatic. A useful practice: before any non-essential purchase, ask whether you'd still want it if no one else would ever see it. Social media makes this harder than it's ever been. Curated feeds show everyone else's highlight reel, never their debt statements. Sign 7. Their income doesn't come from just one source, even if the side sources started small. This isn't necessarily a business or a side hustle empire. Often it's dividend income, rental income, or a small freelance stream. Multiple streams mean one disruption, a layoff, a slow month, doesn't threaten the entire financial picture. It usually starts with just one additional stream, then grows slowly over years, not overnight. The goal isn't necessarily to replace a full-time income. It's to reduce how much any single source controls the outcome. Think of income the same way you'd think about investments. Diversified is generally more resilient than concentrated. Even a small stream, $100 or $200 a month, builds the skill of managing multiple income sources, which compounds later. Sign 8. When their income goes up, their spending doesn't automatically go up with it. This is called lifestyle inflation, and it's one of the sneakiest wealth killers because it feels completely normal. A raise arrives, and almost immediately there's a nicer apartment, a nicer car, more frequent takeout. The raise disappears before it's even felt. Quiet wealth builders often follow a simple rule: bank a meaningful portion of every raise before lifestyle catches up to it. A common version is banking half of every raise and only adjusting lifestyle with the other half. Over a decade of raises, that single habit alone can be the difference between meaningfully growing net worth and staying financially flat despite a rising salary. This is genuinely one of the least talked about habits, and it might matter more than almost anything else on this list. Sign 9. They carry insurance against genuinely catastrophic risks, but they don't over-insure small, affordable stuff. Extended warranties on small electronics or insurance on low-cost items are often poor value compared to just covering the cost yourself if something breaks. The logic is simple: insure the things that could actually derail your finances: major illness, disability, a home, a life dependent on your income. For smaller, affordable risks, they effectively self-insure, knowing they can absorb an occasional bad outcome without financial damage. This keeps insurance spending focused on real protection instead of a long list of small monthly fees that add up quietly. If you're unsure where your own coverage stands, a periodic review of what you're actually paying for is worth the hour it takes. Sign 10. Bigger purchases are planned months in advance, not decided in the moment. There's usually research, a savings target, and a specific timeline before money actually changes hands. This naturally filters out a lot of impulse spending, simply because impulse and a 3-month plan don't really coexist. A simple version of this habit: for any non-essential purchase over a set amount, wait a set number of days before buying. Most impulse urges fade well within that waiting window, and the ones that don't were probably worth buying anyway. It's a small structural change that removes a surprising amount of unplanned spending. This habit also naturally leads to better prices. Planned purchases mean time to compare, wait for sales, or negotiate. Sign 11. They treat financial literacy as an ongoing habit, not a box checked once and forgotten. This doesn't mean obsessing over markets daily. It's more like reading one solid book or a few well-chosen articles occasionally, consistently, over years. Financial rules and products change over time. tax law, account types, interest rates. A little ongoing learning keeps the plan current. The learning tends to focus on fundamentals, how compound interest works, how taxes work, rather than chasing the latest trending stock tip. This is part of why quiet wealth builders rarely fall for get-rich-quick schemes. They've usually already learned enough to recognize the pattern. A little consistent learning is often what protects the other 11 habits on this list over the long run. Sign 12, they're comfortable with slow, unremarkable progress year after year without chasing anything flashy. No crypto gambles, no meme stocks, no chasing whatever trend is loud that particular month. Quiet wealth is mostly the result of ordinary decisions repeated consistently over a long period of time. The early years of that chart often look almost boring, barely any visible movement at all. That's exactly why so few people stick with it long enough to reach the part of the chart that looks impressive. If your plan feels a little boring, that's often a sign it's working exactly as intended. Let's put all 12 signs into a single real numbers example. Picture two households both earning $75,000 a year, both starting at the same point in their careers. Household A leases a new car every 3 years, rents a larger apartment than needed, and upgrades their lifestyle with every raise. Household B drives a paid-off car for 8 years, rents modestly, and automates 15% of every paycheck into investments before anything else. Same income, but household B has roughly $800 to $1,000 more available each month simply from the car and housing choices alone. Invested consistently over 10 years, even at modest historical average returns, that gap alone can grow into a substantial six-figure difference in net worth. Household A, meanwhile, may show a net worth close to zero, or even negative once car loans, lifestyle debt, and minimal savings are accounted for. Same income, same decade, two completely different financial outcomes, and almost none of it came down to how much either household earned. Household B in this example is essentially just applying several of the 12 signs we've covered. Nothing exotic, nothing complicated. This is the core idea behind stealth wealth. It's rarely about a secret trick. It's about which ordinary habits you choose to repeat. None of this means household A is making bad choices for their own life, like priorities differ, and that's a personal decision. But if building net worth quietly is the goal, the habits that get you there are fairly well understood and fairly repeatable. You don't need all 12 at once. Picking 2 or 3 to start with consistently is a realistic and effective starting point. Before we recap, let's clear up a few common myths about what wealth actually looks like. Myth 1. Stealth wealth means being cheap or depriving yourself of everything enjoyable. Not true. It's about spending intentionally on what genuinely matters to you and cutting the spending that's mostly about image. Myth 2. You need a high income for any of this to work. Several of these habits, automation, avoiding lifestyle inflation, planning purchases, matter more at moderate incomes, not less. Myth 3. Genuinely wealthy people never spend on anything nice or enjoyable. Most quiet wealth builders spend freely on a few chosen categories, just not on everything, and rarely to impress anyone else. Myth 4. Following these 12 habits guarantees a specific financial outcome. They don't guarantee anything. Income, health, timing, and circumstances all matter too, but they meaningfully improve the odds over a long enough timeline. Older car, quiet about money, automated investing, living below their means, tracking net worth, and ignoring comparison. Multiple income streams, avoiding lifestyle inflation, insuring against catastrophe only, planning purchases, continuous learning, and patience with boring results. None of these 12 require a huge income. They're habits, and habits are something anyone can start building today. If you only take one thing from this video, let it be this. Pick 2 or 3 signs, apply them consistently, and give it time. If this helped, hit subscribe. I break down one real money strategy like this every week. Tell me in the comments which of these 12 you already do and which one you're going to start on this month. See you in the next one.